Welcome to Fall into the Vortex with Yoli, where we talk about all things fun. Fall into the vortex with Yoli. Fall into the vortex.
Hey, y'all. You
Good.
like that? You like
That
that?
was nice. That was nice. I felt like I was in a discotheque in the
And
80s, like,
that's
what you
hermano. Listen, hey, y'all. Thank you for joining us for another episode with Fall into the Vortex with Yoli. I am super excited because of who's here with me today. I have my hermano, Dr. Angel Acosta. Angel, introduce yourself. Tell us who you are.
Yes, yes, dear sister. So good to be here. Ah, yeah, that was amazing. Um, I'm just grateful for this invitation and for the opportunity to have this conversation with you. And congratulations on the book again. I know that it feels like it's been out for a decade now. It's a true vortex. So
Yes.
it really it's an invitation on so many different levels. So just wanted to congratulate you again on a masterpiece indeed. I
Wow.
remember when I reviewed it, um, and you said, Angel, it's we still have a couple more poems, and we still have to edit it. And I was like, wow, this is my father. I was talking to my father uh, recently about just Dominican history in particular, and um, rhetoricians or orators
Mm,
in DR. And he in Spanish it sounds a lot cooler, but he was
mm,
talking about when orators would say something and their weight would be like rocks.
Say it in Spanish, please.
Eh,
Por favor.
Eran como si tiraban piedra,
Mm,
like almost as if like the weight of their words were so profound. And indeed, I think the book has its weight and its lightness too, which with some of the other material that you explore around being vulnerable. But back to me, I
mm.
just recently defended my dissertation and completed it and graduated through a pandemic. So
Oh my gosh.
it doesn't feel like I graduated. It feels like
Mm.
I had a Zoom rite of passage ceremony. So just kind of still relishing um,
Mm.
that moment, even though again, it doesn't feel like it's like a completion.
Yes.
So it's an odd moment, but it's a beautiful one. I'm just
Mm.
grateful that I was able to finish, and got some wonderful support from my wife and family
Mhm.
to
Beautiful
complete
wife.
that, and
Hey.
you played a role. Shout outs to Dr. Celia Euler.
Mm.
She gets
Bless her.
love.
Hmm.
But so I finished that, and for the last decade, I've been in the field of education. Um, I worked for a nonprofit for about almost 8 years, helping young people get access to higher education and develop leadership skills, and supporting their staff and their school leaders with designing programs that would support those students. And then my work shifted towards like more like mindfulness and
Hmm.
social justice education, and that kind of shifted it even further with a focus on healing centered education.
Yes. Yes.
So that's the work that I'm really excited about now, is what does it mean to create conditions for people to thrive and do their own healing work if possible, and explore really difficult material with regards to our past, our country's past. So looking at this beautiful timeline created by the New School
Mm.
committee in the New School, the 400 Years of Inequality Committee. Um, they've created the 400 Years of Inequality Project, constituted by Dr. Mindy Fullilove, Robert Fullilove, William Murish, Robert Sember, Tim Nottage,
Good people.
just beautiful people. And out of that came this like 4 by 20 foot timeline that over the last 4 years we've been able to invite people to walk through and see. And it was an attempt to commemorate the 400th anniversary of the arrival of enslaved Africans to Jamestown, alongside the many other beautiful projects that came about, like the 1619 project in the New York Times. So last thing is just consulting. You know, I consider myself an educational consultant, and so just continuing to do that. And
but wait. No, I
well,
have to say,
well,
you are very humble. You are very humble, but I'm going to let it be known.
yeah, what?
Okay. That number one, in so many ways, you are my teacher. You have not just taught me how to embrace this incredible timeline. You hold incredible sessions where you are developing others around the world to embrace this timeline and to bring it into other communities. In addition to that, you're holding healing sessions where, you know, this Zoom thing, it's almost like you've penetrated Zoom and you come into people's lives, Angel, and you're teaching us, I want to say, how to breathe, how to be, and you're doing it in such amazingly consistent ways. I mean, I just want to say you are very, very humble. You know, you are doing incredible work. And in addition to that, you're the founder of the New York City Healing Collective, where somehow in your spare time, you're following what other folks are doing and creating these amazing images of yogis, of educationalists, of you just did Bettina Love, abolitionists, and you're giving shout outs through your IG of warriors in the movement.
Yes.
So I had to stop you because I know you wouldn't talk about it, but you know, I just want to thank you for being in my life, for being my brother, and for being a light to so many of us. So many of us.
Thank you. I only laugh because, you know, we work on a lot of work, and so there's so much I can, you know, I can share, but that the critical humility that kind of comes with the work that we do, you know, stepping into every conversation with some humility. You know, people can learn about the work, they can find me, but in this moment with you, I have to be humble, and that's partly your teaching, so it's your fault.
Well, clearly, Vortex watchers, you can see there is a mutual respect here and a deep love for life, for living to the fullest that we teach each other. And I do want to ask you something about the New York City Healing Collective. And yes, indeed, there will be a link for folks to find out more about you, Angel.
Yeah.
But can you say a little bit about the New York City Healing Collective for those who don't know?
Yeah, please. Thank you for that question. The New York City Healing Collective is a project that I envisioned several years ago of just creating initially a network of people who were doing healing work in the broadest sense, you know, not just people who were in the healing arts like yoga, like, you know, now with the acceptance of older ways of doing healing work like Reiki and breath work and meditation, but also, you know, people who do healing work in non-traditional ways, like teaching, like you're a healer deeply. And just, so I envisioned a project that would, on the one hand, highlight people who were doing work in the field. And we've done a podcast with just 4 episodes, but some really good conversations.
Yes.
And we have a Instagram account that curates a lot of this work, looks at different books that are useful. But specifically right now we have 2 series. One is called the Beacons of Hope series, and that's just women. For now, it's just women of color. We'll explore and expand that soon, but just looking at women of color who are doing just beautiful work. And you've been one of the luminaries who we featured, and many others. And then the second is Men Who Sit.
Yes.
So again, it's mainly men of color, and that'll expand soon. But I wanted to look at our community and see, you know, what was out there. And so looking at men of color who actively practice meditation and mindfulness and different contemplative practices. Many of them teach, meditation. Some of them are even yoga teachers. So just wanted to create the space for that uplifting. And then the future of it is going to be really interesting, because now that I'm done, my sister and I, Dolores, shout out to her. She's been really helpful with that. So I see it as a small community project that plays the function of affirming. Because
Yes.
like I just got a text from a colleague who we had done a piece for, and she called me and said, thank you for seeing me. And this sister just got tenure, and is working so hard and doing incredible work. And sometimes in our academies, we out here doing crazy work,
Grinding.
but we're seen, but sometimes not enough. And that made me feel as though that project could have that possible power of affirming and validating work. So
no, and it's so beautiful. I'm just imagine seeing it all. Almost reminds me of like a version of a comic book, and these are the superheroes, right?
Yeah.
Having us identify our superpowers, but that's another conversation for another day. I am grateful for all that you are doing, and specifically for the New York City Healing Collective. It is something that is missing. It's something that has not been there. So you're filling such an incredible void, and you are taking the moment to see people. So I just want to say also that I see you, and this is why I'm so grateful that you're here with me and sharing all that you're sharing. I do want to pivot and turn to the book, right? Because I could talk to you for hours.
Yeah, for real.
Very easy, right? But the show is a limited time. For those of you who are just tuning in, if you've not seen any previous episodes, let me just explain this is how we roll. So you'll see at the beginning, as Dr. Angel Acosta did, he talked a bit about what was going on in his life. And we just caught up a little bit. And now it turns to a point where I'm asking him to read something from the book. And he'll talk a little bit about why he chose that particular poem. And then based on what he says, we're just going to flow for about 20 minutes and see where it takes us. So that's the format. Unscriptedness is the format. So I'm going to be quiet right now, and I'm forever the teacher. So I've got my book here. So tell us what page you're on, and I'm ready to turn to it. I think he froze. This is what happens in the Zoom land, right? So hopefully the Wi-Fi will return and he'll come back. Come back, Angel. I hope. But this is such an incredible metaphor, because one thing I do learn from Dr. Acosta is to sit and be patient. And so it's almost like a meditation. I lost him. We're going to be patient until he comes back. How about I read something until he comes back on? One thing that's so beautiful for me is being able to hear others read my poems and share what they think. He's on his way back. I'm glad you came back into the vortex. I was just about to read something. And actually I was saying, what a beautiful moment, because you are the representation of kind of sitting and being and sitting still. And so in that moment when the Wi-Fi froze, it was almost like a meditation in a stillness.
Yes. My apologies for that.
No, not at all.
I do think that, sometimes when you have a lot of energy being exchanged through these things that we've created, it just can't handle
it can't handle the flow.
Can't handle the vibes.
The vibe.
So yeah, just I hope you all kind of take a little moment just to slow down. So on page 127,
127, yes.
yeah, there's it's called, the title of it is Baggage.
Mhm.
There are several other poems that I enjoy and I like, and or that, you know, some poems you don't like because they invite you to have some real conversations with yourself.
Hello.
Um, yeah. So this one is called Baggage. This is one of the favorites. I wouldn't say my favorite, but one of the ones that keeps coming
Mm.
back to me. So Baggage. You carry the story in your eyes. It weighs on your shoulders. There are days you swallow it whole, but on rare occasions, when you set it free, those of us who listen and hear are blessed and made all the more wiser. You know, even now as I read it, you get something. I get something from it every time.
Mm.
Um,
What's hitting you now that didn't hit you maybe before?
um, the piece around there are days you swallow it whole. But even like when you say on rare occasions, when you set it free, this kind of releasing of all of what we carry. And when you are seen, you know, those of us who listen are blessed. It's almost slightly like what happens when you take care of yourself.
Mm.
Um, and how we're all made better if we're all taking better care of ourselves
Wow.
on one level. Um, but yeah, so it's profound too, because like those of us who listen and hear are blessed. What do you mean by listen? You know, how do you know? So let's say in this case, I'm assuming, you know, you're writing this to a loved one, a lover, and you know how as men we carry so much, you know, and part of what you're swallowing whole is the weight of the world, the toxic masculinity. Just you could play with that in terms of analysis.
Mm-hmm.
So I relate to it because I carry a lot in my shoulders and my eyes, and my father carried a lot in his shoulders and his eyes, and my brothers carried a lot in their shoulders and their eyes, and I know many brothers who do. So just to think about what would it mean for us to set that free,
Mm.
you know,
Mm.
and then to have a community around us that can listen and hear when we set that free,
Oh.
and then be blessed by that, and then made more wiser. Um, because we know that a lot of times that doesn't happen because of the real weight of the world, and then also the perceived weight of the world for men.
Mm.
Some of the stuff that I carry, this unnecessary baggage. You know, some of the roles that we assume. Well, I need to be this. I need to be a certain way. So just provocative, and I just something new is like thinking about the weight that I carry that is unnecessary.
Mm.
You know, but the opening line is, you carry the story in your eyes. It weighs on your shoulders. You know, that since I first read, when I first reviewed it, and then I read the book slowly, and then, you know, we've been in different events where you've invited me to pick a poem. This was the same
Yes.
poem that I picked for
I
that,
noticed that.
for COVID-19 wind down. You know,
I noticed that,
and
Angel.
maybe maybe that's me being lazy.
No, 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 no. You are anything but lazy. Let me tell you, it's making me think that it's speaking
Which poem should I
to
pick?
you.
That's
Speaking to you.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
how I see it.
So
Can I tell you a story about that poem?
yeah. Please.
So that poem, which is in the Tyrone section,
Mm.
I wrote that poem after looking at a photograph that he sent me. He was pursuing, I think, modeling at the time, and this was a photo shoot that he was going on. and he was just randomly sending me some photos. And I saw that photo, and there was a couple of photos that he shared with me, but I saw that photo, and there was a look in his eyes. I've always been very intrigued, even the times that we were together, very intrigued with his eyes because, you know, they say the eyes are the windows to the soul. Really, if you are looking deeply at someone, you will see stories in their eyes.
Of course.
And this is a person with such a large personality, and yet I couldn't get over, even the first time I met him, that there was such sadness. There was such sadness in his eyes. And this particular photo, it wasn't sadness, but there was a story. And I said, I looked at it, I said, you know what? I'm going to have to write a poem to understand what that photo is. And that's the poem that came out of me. I think it might have come that next day, or it might have come within the hour.
Yeah.
But that was just from looking at a photograph.
Yeah. That's good to know, you know, and I just want to commend you again, because I think one of the things that I said during the last beautiful event we had, public event based around the book, we had a beautiful turnout too. I may have said this, but because I see you in context, right? You're in the academy, you're in a beautiful department, English department at Columbia Teachers College, you know, this Ivy League institution. And, you know, you've been doing, 20 years of teaching, and a lot of your scholarship has been, around racial literacy and boys and formerly incarcerated women, and just this beautiful corpus, this beautiful work. And then, so for me, I was excited to see this first book be a book of poetry. So what I said in that panel discussion was that the book is a form of public pedagogy.
I don't know if I remember you saying that?
I think I did say that, because I said it fast, probably. I said it fast. You know me, I get too hyped. But I didn't go deeper into it, but allow me to. So because of how deeply you go in terms of your relationships, your loves, people can see, very closely, very intimately this life, this love trajectory.
Yes.
And it teaches. It teaches.
Wow.
Whoever dares to really read it and open to it. You learn. And the level of learning depends on
where you
the
are.
moment where you are, right? But regardless, it does teach you something about love. I think it does. People are like, oh, the book is getting too much love, there has to be a critique. Well, whatever. I mean, if there's a critique, it's just that every work is imperfect. So
absolutely,
please.
Because we are imperfect.
Please,
so how if someone imperfect can produce perfection? There's no such thing.
Yeah, that's the thing, maybe the beauty about it being a poetry, because anybody who critiques it, it's really interpretive. It's like,
wow.
It's okay, thank you.
Wow.
I missed the comma. Thank you.
You're a mess.
Thank you for that interpretation. Thank you for that. Bye.
Wow.
No, I was kidding. No, we welcome. We welcome. But the work, this work is not here as necessarily scholarship per se. Even though I said, since it's public pedagogy,
yes,
it can create some space for it to be a form of scholarship.
And it has, Hermano. I want to say this.
Yeah, tell me.
Number one, it is an artifact of my archaeological dig on love and intimacy. And people know that I have been thinking about, and very especially, because you helped to design the model, the racial literacy development model.
The pyramid.
The pyramid, where one of the components is archaeology of the Self.
Yeah.
So that's work that we have been doing
Yeah.
together, will continue to do
Yeah.
together. But what I want to say is, I remember it was a conversation with Dr. Chris Emden,
Yep.
who really first helped me see how the book, and he was specifically stuck with the Tyrone section, how it is a metaphor for the way children of color and families love schools, and that the love is unrequited.
Mm-hmm.
So he took that. What's happening, I'm noticing, is the way schools are embracing it. So
Yes.
there is a school that has purchased 430 copies.
Is
For
that a
each
middle school?
member.
What grade is the school?
No, this is maybe it's a middle through high school.
Yeah,
I'm gonna meet with them tomorrow.
yeah.
But there's a teacher who purchased 60 copies for all of her middle schoolers.
Yeah.
And more schools, even a place here at TC, a department bought 100 copies.
Yeah.
Another program at TC bought 60 copies. And this was listed, in the academy when we have these monthly meetings, at least at TC.
Yeah.
You're asked to submit, well, what are you working on? What grants have you gotten or have you gone for? What have you published? Where have you spoken?
Yeah.
And this was listed as my scholarship.
Yeah, I remember. And it is. It truly is. It truly is. I'm just thinking about the haters. That's getting
Hey.
no, but I am so glad that there will be some young people really wrestling with this, because in fact, I think it's a good time.
Yes.
Because of distance learning, to have a text that sends you on such a vortex, a journey, even if they only pick up a couple, because you could, one poem, I could write, I could play with that in so many different ways. You carry it in your eyes. You can ask children, what is the psychosomatic manifestations of stress?
Ooh.
Right. And how does the body keep the score? That classic text by some of the world's leading trauma specialists, Van der Kolk, like literally the body keeps the score. That sometimes that pain in your chest, that tightness in your shoulders, that look in your eyes is actually a psychosomatic manifestation of the stress.
My God.
That comes with being in a world that requires you to just, maybe overwork, depending on where you sit on the spectrum of privilege. But but even beyond, yeah. So just a gift that keeps on giving, And that's why I think the last thing I'll say is that's why I think it's a beautiful thing that it was a book of poetry, because it just lends to so much interpretation.
I want to thank you for that. I also want to publicly thank you for being one of the pre-reviewers, and your review was so beautiful, that I had to include it. In its entirety.
What did I say? Read it to me. What did I say?
Oh, yes. This is so perfect.
I said, this is popping.
You said, this is popping. No, you said, Love from the Vortex is an evocative book of poems that ceaselessly opens our hearts page after page. Dr. Sealey-Ruiz holds our hands and walks us through her journey of finding, losing, and holding on to love. One falls out and falls back in love by the end of it. This is a must-have for those of us who enjoy expanding our hearts while we read. Now more than ever, we need texts like this that remind us of the art of loving in full presence. Angela Acosta, founder of the New York City Healing Collective.
That's fun.
Why now more than ever? I'm kind of reading and rereading. And if you can also say, what do you mean about expanding our hearts while we read? I don't know why that's jumping out at me right now.
Yeah. Well, it jumps out at me too. I remember when I finished the review, I think you may have asked me when I was, obviously we're always busy. I was dealing with dissertation and I was dealing with so much. And this is, it's a big deal for me, for you to ask, can you review? That was a big deal. So I took it to heart. I took a deep breath in the middle of, you know, everything that we're holding. And I was present. You know, it wasn't like I'm reading this thing just because Yoli asked and I'm gonna just give it some random, you know, good review, you know. No, I wanna sit with it. So I remember going through all the poems and I was like, you know, these are hitting, you know. And then at the end, I'm like, okay, so what was that experience like? And so that review is fairly spot on in terms of how I felt. And in terms of now more than ever, this was before COVID.
Yes.
I thought that even before COVID, we were maybe not entering, but definitely in a darker space.
Yes. Particularly the
and
country and what was coming out of Washington, D.C. and
yeah, all that
all
stuff.
that was happening, families being locked in cages and
yeah,
yes.
yeah. So I thought that it was a light. It was a light. But now during COVID, I mean, it's a beam. You know, it's the you know how there's different types of lighting. You know, so it's almost like it was luminous before. Now it you know has the potential to be, the luminosity increases.
Wow.
But as far as like what was that second piece, the loving piece?
Oh yeah, you know, you answered. I said now more than ever, and then talking about expanding the heart. So you answered it quite beautifully. You talked about when you were doing the review.
The expanding the heart piece is a little different because you don't need necessarily dark times or difficult times to be invited to do that. You know, so just, you know, that idea of opening our hearts, not just to the text, but to ourselves. Because from what I hear from other people who have read the text, and just some of the reviews that have been coming in, is that sure, the poems reveal and show this journey of yours, but they provoke and remind us of our own, you know, and the ways that we may have dealt with the situation that you explore in a particular line or a particular stanza. So from listening to, especially the women who said that this has generated some healing.
Yes.
In large part because of the ways you invited, well, the ways that the text provokes us to open our hearts and exercise that muscle in a way that maybe, you know, other mediums don't. Because I know, you know, even reading Baggage, I think about it. I read it and thinking about you, but then I also read it thinking about me, my eyes, and as I said before, my
fathers.
People, yeah. So,
wow,
that's what I kind of meant a little bit by that review.
Let me tell you, I'm going to be playing this one back over and over. But believe it or not, Angel, this is the end of our time. I mean, you would not believe that we've been talking for 40 something minutes or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So what I'd like to do now as we come to the end of what I consider such a blessed conversation for me, is when I ask the guests to share whatever is in their heart. Usually it's about what have you learned in your own life about relationships, whether it be familial relationships or romantic relationships. And what might you want to share or offer by way of advice or just sharing, right? Or anything that's on your mind. Is really open. What's most important is that you have the last word on this. And so what's your last word to our guest?
Yeah. Well, in the indigenous tradition, you know, many indigenous traditions, you know, closing ceremonies and opening ceremonies involve acknowledgement. So I just want to acknowledge you and acknowledge the text. I think the most profound thing that I can say, if at all profound, is some of the ways in which not just the book, but also kind of seeing you live has allowed me to get closer to my wife and to loving other Black women. You know, this the very interesting and powerful thing to fully love a Black woman. It's so much history there, and especially the journey with my wife and I. You know, me trying to love her more deeply and also struggling to love her too, you know, because she carries a lot in her eyes. And some of the ways that we label Black women's anger and their pain, you know, when we say that Black women are too much, what are we saying? What are we saying? So just thank you, and thank the text for
Coming through me.
yeah, yeah. And then the last thing I'll say is and this is connected to the first response around my wife, and then, you know, loving her more deeply, but also almost like, I wanted to say this to you before, but almost an apology to my wife directly in terms of some of the ways that I've hurt her. But almost, this is by way of the six lovers that may not necessarily be able to do this, but I can. But, you know, saying sorry to you. You know, they cause a lot of pain, and I think in many cases they would say that to you, but don't have the will or the courage. So I want to say it for them and with them. You know, just sorry for the many ways that you've been hurt by patriarchy unfolding through these individual people. That's what I would say.
Thank you. Oh, Lord. Thank you, Angel. And thank you, everyone, for falling into the vortex with us this evening. We'll see you at the next episode.